speaking of the Mariners, they're pretty good. All-Star break. I was there for the All-Star break for all those festivities. Seattle did a great job, and I've talked about this before. But the overwhelming sentiment I had then from people that work for the Mariners to the fans on the street was, when I was greeted, Brett, great to see you back. Reminds us we were here in 2001, the last time the All-Star game was there. Seattle did a great job then. But what I heard most was, I wish our team was doing better.
Yeah.
And I had that same sentiment. It's like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if they were in first place with all these, kind of a cherry on top? Well, since then, I think there were 10 games out or so. For a minute, a week ago, they were leading the division. I never thought that, and I don't think you thought that either, that the division was in reach. It was, you're going to be fighting your tail off for a wild card berth. All of a sudden today, I wake up. If it ended today, I think they're in a tie for the third wild card spot, and I think we've got 13 games to go. You've been watching this team. You watched them last year, 90 games, got to the postseason. I think if that Verlander in game one with the Astros goes differently, it might be a different series, but it didn't. They ended up getting swept. They won 90 games a year ago. 2 years ago, they won 90 games, just missed getting into the playoffs. Similar nucleus, although we've had some new guys. Robbie Ray missed the season, but the young Miller and a young Wu have stepped up to be that fourth and fifth in the rotation. What do you see from this team? How good are they?
Well, but it's been like almost two different seasons. Like you said, it was very lackluster for the first half at the All-Star break. It looked pretty dismal. And then they just took off in August. They won more games than the Mariners have ever won in August, more than the 2001 Mariners that won 116 games. So, and that put them right in the thick of the race. And as you said, it put them into first place. And then I think everybody's evaluation changed to this is a team that should make the playoffs. They had put themselves in position, and then September started and they proceeded to go 5-11, and I think they won yesterday, and so they're still very poor September, but it's gonna. They still have 7 games left with the Rangers, who they're tied with, and 3 with the Astros.
Yeah,
they finished with 10 games against those 2 teams, so that's going to determine. It's there for the taking for them. But I always felt they had a chance to come back because they had the pitching. They had Castillo, Gilbert, and Kirby, 3 studs in the rotation, and then these 2 kids who came up, the Wu and Miller, showed that they are formidable too. So any team that can throw a good starter out there pretty much every night where you like your chances, that's going to, over a 162 game season, that's going to play out, and that's going to prevail. And so I thought that they would hit a stretch where they would just outpitch teams, and that's what happened. And then Julio decided to go into warp speed and carried them in August. And now I think some of those pitchers are kind of on fumes, and the bats have cooled off a little, so it's going to be nip and tuck down the stretch. But I think they have a good shot at the wild card spot, because the Rangers are really, really hurting. Their bullpen is just killing them right now, and I think they're vulnerable for the Mariners to take them down the stretch.
Yeah, I think I look at the bullpen, and for the Rangers, I think they're 12th in the league. That's their weakness. Best offense in the American League, probably only rivaled by the Atlanta Braves and all of baseball for offenses. I'll tell you, you never wish bad on anybody, but Scherzer going down.
Yeah,
man. Because I was doing the fan in Texas, and they talked to me about the Rangers. I said, well, if you get Scherzer and Evaldi pitching like they can, and I always go back to my generation, and the last time I remember something like that was 2001 when it was Randy Johnson, it was Curt Schilling for the Diamondbacks.
Mm-hmm.
When you have 2 horses like that, they can completely take over a postseason. Now, postseason is a little different. You've got more rounds to get through. So, you're going to wear out if you only got 2 guys. But Texas up and down with Gray, and they added Montgomery from St. Louis. They're deep as far as that starting rotation. Scherzer out now. Anytime they say, well, he's going to miss the remainder of the season. We'll see about the postseason. Don't plan on that postseason because you wouldn't miss the remainder.
No.
But like you said, there's the Mariners finish up with Texas, Houston, Texas. So basically, as a player, you really can't ask for anything other. Hey, we control our own destiny right here. We
Yeah.
win the most games, and then it's not even about the wild card; it's about the division. They're only a game and a half out of the Houston Astros, and you worry about them because the Astros have been awful quiet this year. Nobody's been talking about the Astros. I think that's because they've been so good for so long now, but
Yeah.
they're going to be there in the end. Who do you see around the league? Let's just stick with the American League. I know Baltimore's been a great story. Tampa Bay, whatever they're doing, they've got a unicorn organization over there. It seems every year, year in and year out, they just churn out winning teams that get to the postseason. For me, in the Central, I don't see much. Minnesota's winning a
Yeah.
terrible division, but a Houston, Texas, Seattle. What do you see the postseason? Who really, from the games you've watched this year, kind of caught your eye? Like, watch out for those guys.
Yeah. Well, if the Astros, just because of their pedigree, I think are always going to be tough if they make it. But you look at the Astros, they lost 2 out of 3 to Oakland, 2 out of 3 to Kansas City. This is in the last week plus. And then last night they had a 2-run lead in the ninth inning, and they gave up a 3-run homer to Cedric Mullins and lost to the Orioles. So they're floundering a little bit. So I mean, I think they're vulnerable for the Mariners to maybe catch them, but we'll see. But they're also, they're a proud group who I think they're sort of preordained to win that division. But Tampa Bay, they're amazing. You're right. You look at the names on that team, and they're not household names, but they just know how to put together a team that's good in every aspect. And yeah, I think they're going to be very formidable when you get to the postseason because they have a good bullpen, good rotation, and somehow they've got a lineup that just top to bottom. They have platoons, and they just know how to match up. And the other team that's kind of on the rise is the Orioles. Lots of great young players. This Gunnar Henderson is something else. Adley Rutschman, the catcher from Oregon, very, very good rising star. I'm not sure if they quite have the pitching to go all the way, but I think that's a team that's going to be a force in the American League for years to come because they're very young and they got more talent coming. So, but I think the Braves are the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing this year. They've unbelievable lineup, frontline pitching. I think there's in baseball, who knows who's going to win? The best team doesn't always win. And that year that the Phillies got, remember they had the 4 aces with Cliff Lee and Roy Halladay and Oswalt, and I can't remember who the 4th was, but everyone gave them the pennant in the World Series, and they didn't even get there. So you just never know when it comes to the postseason.
Dodgers a year ago, winning 111 games, and an 89 win Padre team knocks them off. For me, I look at the AL. And there's some talented teams there. I mean, teams that if you just send them to me, I say they could go deep into the postseason. But it's okay. We know Baltimore's in. We know Tampa Bay's in. We know Minnesota's in. There's 3 spots.
Yeah.
And you got Houston, Texas, Seattle, and the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah. One of those is not going to make it. One of them's not going to make it. One of
those, and that's 4 real good teams.
Yeah.
Toronto, they're known for their offense. They can pitch. Toronto can pitch. So it's going to be really interesting down the stretch. I think it should be a fun stretch. And you talk about late in the year being tired because it is a long year. You got spring training and then you got 162 games. Of course you're tired. But when you're in a pennant race like this, and as you mentioned, Texas, Houston, Texas to finish for the Mariners, not only for the Mariners, but that's an exciting finish for the Rangers. So I would assume those last 2 weeks, nobody's going to be tired with everything that's going to be on the line. It's going to be a hell of a run. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I agree with you. I think from the Mariners standpoint, I think they should be happy they're playing those teams. You don't have to rely on somebody else beating those teams. If you want it, you beat them yourself. And then you don't have to worry. You've picked up a game no matter what happens if you beat Houston or or Texas. Right now, they've sort of had to scoreboard watch and hope other teams knock off the teams that they're catching. But that stops come. I mean, you're still going to watch the scoreboard to see how Toronto does, or whichever one of those two teams that you're not playing. But it's in your own hands. If you win, it doesn't really matter what the other teams do because you're going to make the postseason.